Hello good people of the internet, it has been close to 6 months since I uploaded my initial review on this thing here, the Logitech MX Master 3. I reckon it's time for a short follow-up. After all, I can only legitimately recommend a product I've personally continued using after the excitement of owning a new gadget dies down. What do we think? Will I be describing it in the same glowing terms as I did half a year ago? You better continue watching to find out. Won't you look there, it's my MX Master 3 sitting on my desk, and that's not just because I didn't want to spend any money on a new mouse. I'm still as impressed with this mouse as I was 6 months ago when I unpacked it. Let's start with the positives. I've really grown to like the more streamlined and flatter design this model has compared to its predecessor. I recently held my original model in the hand and boy does it feel bulky. Using the MX Master 3, I don't have to bend my wrist quite as far back and it makes working for multiple hours much more bearable. The right and left click buttons have held up and I still enjoy their clickiness. The same goes for the scroll wheel. It's the best feeling scroll wheel I've ever used. And I even started using the free spin mode when browsing long articles. By the way, if you're wondering how I edit with the teeny little keyboard you just saw, make sure you subscribe because there will be a video on that coming up very shortly. The extra buttons are not quite as good. I mentioned it in my first video and I'll say it again. They're far too mushy and especially the gesture button requires quite a bit of force to press. And considering you're pushing your thumb sideways and not up or down, it can be a bit awkward to use. That's not to say that I don't use them. I even use the gesture button quite frequently to navigate through virtual desktops on Windows. The side buttons I use in practically every editing application I use and even for simple browsing. I could no longer use a mouse that doesn't have them. If only Logitech could make them a bit more clicky and easier to press. An underappreciated addition to the MX Master 3 has certainly been the USB Type-C or USB-C charging port. I always have a USB-C cable connected to one of my laptop's USB ports to charge my phone and camera, and not having to dig out an old micro B cable every time the mouse is running out of juice makes life just that little bit easier. Speaking of charging it, the battery life has been absolutely outstanding, usually lasting me a couple of months between charges. As to my setup, I've already shown you how to use the MX Master 3 in Lightroom Classic in a previous video, so I won't be covering that again as it hasn't changed. But I have changed how I use it in Premiere Pro. Because I generally have one hand on the keyboard and one on the mouse while editing videos in Premiere Pro, I've basically mapped the keyboard shortcuts I can't easily reach with one hand onto the mouse. The back button will ripple delete the selected clip and the forward button will make a cut. I use both function keys very often and I'd otherwise have to move my hand to the right side of the keyboard to activate them. Using the thumb wheel, which I've mapped to the arrow keys, I can skip between individual frames on the timeline. It goes without saying that I am not a gamer. I do not and never have gamed with this mouse. But one thing's for sure, and that is that this mouse is not a gaming mouse and it has no aspirations to be one. Despite that, I found it to be plenty accurate enough while working in Photoshop and Lightroom Classic. With all that out of the way, do I still recommend the Logitech MX Master 3? Of course I do, and that's more or less all I have to say on the matter. The MX Master 3 is a pricey but fantastic bit of kit. If you're someone who works with creative applications such as Photoshop, Lightroom, Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve, you should definitely consider getting one. Or maybe wait until version 4 arrives, they might finally improve the extra buttons on that one. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, if you did enjoy this video, please leave me a like as a show of appreciation and consider subscribing while you're down there. If, however, you didn't like this video, hit that dislike button twice to make it extra impactful. With that, it has been enough from me for one day. I will see you in the next one. Bye.